So Dwight, so I think so in a lot of our DM sessions, it's this thing of the rogue goes in and he sees that there's monsters up ahead, and then he goes back, and then you have frontline go in, and then everybody clambers around frontline, and you
Right.
leave the rest of the party unavailable. Which, if you think about it, if you're sending mercenaries and the fighter has 80 people on him and he's still not going down, the wizard in the back who is undefendable, who has no defenses and has no HP is a really good target, especially because that fireball is going to hit and kill everybody quicker than the fighter ever will.
Right. So, I mean, I guess in today's episode, we're going to talk about monster behavior.
Yes.
And really retooling, if you're the GM, how your monsters do things in a way that makes more sense. Not for you just to have an encounter, but for you to have, I don't want to say memorable encounters, but realistic encounters is what I want to say.
Well, always having some tension of the wizard like getting hit
Right.
is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and exactly. So, look, if you haven't liked this video, please please give us a subscribe. Love to have you.
Mm-hmm.
That said, so here's how I kind of look at it. What's the average intelligence of the monsters that are being thrown?
Yeah.
Right? So if they're animals, the intelligence is like a 3 or lower. And therefore, think about in real world, for the most part, if it's like a big cat or something, it's going to attack the closest thing to it, or it might attack the thing that did the most damage to it if it has options, right?
Yeah. And
I mean, it's not going to go racing, move through 7 guys and pounce at the guy in robes in the back. It doesn't think that way.
And from an animal's perspective, the big burly guy in plate mail
Is
a lot
the
more
threat.
intimidating than the guy in the robes in the back.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, I mean, like if you look at cat behavior, cat's a great one to look at.
Mm-hmm.
You look at cat behavior. What do? They get big,
Mm-hmm.
right? They get huge because they don't
Everything
want.
gets big because
It's like,
the
if
bigger
I'm bigger you are, you're going to back off. So
Yep.
it's going to hit the biggest thing it can. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so let's move on to something that makes more sense now. Your average intelligence, goblinoids, humanoids, all these other things.
Yeah, so intelligence of about 10.
10, right. So your normal intelligence people, 10 to 12, they're going to look at it, they're going to come in, and they're going to assess a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just be honest. You're in a world, right? You're in a world where anybody in a robe is a spellcaster.
Yes.
Anybody in full plate is a fighter.
And
right?
anybody in between is whatever.
It's something different,
Yeah.
right? The rogue is easily knowable because he's got, he's all like dark and foreboding. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't take much for even unskilled commoners.
Somebody with a bow is probably a ranger.
Right, you walk in and go, okay, well, there's a spellcaster, unless the commoner's never been outside of their own world and no one has ever come into their village, pretty much you're going to say any humanoid with an average intelligence, even a dumb intelligence, so like 8 to 12, is immediately going to know who is roughly what.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
you're not the only adventurers. There's other clerics. People
Yeah.
know what clerics are.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, guy in full plate brandishing a mace? He's probably a
He's
cleric.
a cleric, right. Yeah, especially if he's got a bludgeoned weapon. I mean, he's probably he's got to be a cleric because they got some weird like, oh, we're not going to spill blood. It's really more of my favorite deity likes these weapons. But and obviously too, they're also going to have like some weird holy symbol around their neck or maybe painted on their shield or their armor. I mean, it's going to be really obvious. Everybody in the world, it's kind of like, I guess it'd be like this. So you're walking down the street in today's day and age, and you see somebody with a hard hat and steel-toed boots on and reflective gear, and you go, well, I don't know exactly what trade they're in, but I know they're in some sort of construction-like trade.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's in a 3-piece Armani suit, tie, briefcase. Okay, I don't know exactly what he does, but he's a businessman.
Yeah.
Right? He does something in business. Could be finance, could be... Right. Now,
This
if I'm
guy's
going to get on
wearing
a
scrubs,
fight...
probably some sort of medical field.
Scrubs or a medical field or something, right? So I'm going to look at this and go, so if I'm going to get on a fight on the RTD train, which is what we have, so where I live, I'm not going to fight the construction worker, right? Because I'm looking at it like, well, I'm not going to fight the construction worker because he's the threat. Or maybe that's what I have to fight is the construction worker because he's the threat.
Mm-hmm.
But if I knew that the businessman can cast spells, I might be going after the businessman first, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what I'm looking at. So think about it in those terms. So if you have a group of, let's just use bugbears for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a bugbear. This is a very large goblinoid creature.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of looks like a very furry goblin with a bear face. And then you have like a bunch of lower level goblins that are kind of following around, and maybe a shaman, right? Some sort of mage user from an orc mage user. So the bugbear typically is going to go fight the fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're both the brutes.
They're
they
both
need
brutes.
to engage each other because that makes sense. The shaman, of course, the shaman's going to fight the mage. Probably, yeah. Or he might be backing up something else.
Or battlefield control.
What do you do with these goblins?
I would say...
Ordinarily, everyone's like, oh, well, you just throw them against the front line. That's the mistake.
Some of them would probably go help the bugbear.
Absolutely.
But once you get to a point where there's 8 guys on a fighter, you're probably thinking, there's enough people there.
But the other thing, too, is the goblins are smart.
Rogue.
The goblins are smart enough to realize if the bugbear's getting hurt...
They can't
take this thing on.
No.
And to be honest, if you're dealing with, again, like a barbarian or a fighter, they're probably going to have something like a feat called Cleave. Or worse, Great Cleave.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, these guys have seen this before. Because their bugbear has Cleave. Their bugbear has Great Cleave. They've seen him hit a guy and literally just keep hitting guys until he couldn't embed his axe into the skull of anything else anymore.
They're honestly better hitting almost anybody else than is in front line.
Yeah. And so the thing is, why would an average... And goblins have an intelligence of 10.
Mm-hmm.
So why would they flock against the fighter?
Yes.
No, they're going to oh, well, guess what? The fighter now is busy fighting the fighter, right? Our fighter's fighting their fighter. Our front line's fighting their front line. Yeah, 1 or 2 of the bigger goblinoids might go help him. But the other 5 or 6 are like, well, the fighter can't move to prevent me from infiltrating the back rank.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go see how that ranger's doing with that bow. Let's go see how that guy in robes is doing, because I know I can hit the guy in robes.
I might be able to hit that ranger.
I can't hit the guy in full plate.
No.
I mean, I can. I can always touch the guy in full plate, but I can't do any damage to him.
I can always roll a nat 20 every now and then and crit.
Maybe. But I'd be better off fighting in the back line. And this is, I think, the thing that really should just be taken into account is your monsters with an average intelligence are going to have some sort of plan, specifically if you're invading their home, for how to defend it. Now, let's talk about something a little bit more devious. A lot of times this is what bothered me so much about certain DMs that I've played with. And I don't mean any I've actively played with now. But, and just many I've seen online. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, it's a dragon. You're fighting a dragon, right? The typical trope, you're fighting a dragon. Now, in D&D 3.5, dragons are, depending on their age, but they're sorcerers at a certain level. So younger ones may not have any sorcerer ability because they're just brand new, but like by the time you get to like a challenge rating 3 or 4, they have some sorcerer abilities. And if you're fighting an ancient red dragon, they're a 20th level effective sorcerer.
Not because of their stats or their damage, it's because of their spells.
Exactly. And so then the thing is, what it ends up looking like is the first time I've ever fought a dragon, right? DM brings out this mini.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally like one of the things he had on his shelf for decorative purposes. He's like, here's your dragon, and you're like, oh my God. And it's like, that's about right, actually. This thing is colossally sized. It's huge.
Yes.
I mean, it's colossal, to be very fair. It's not huge. It's colossal.
Mm-hmm.
It's 80 feet tall. It's a building.
Mm-hmm.
But what did it do? And here's the thing. So, ancient red dragon.
Bite tail?
Claw, bite tail, breath weapon. Wait 6 rounds, 1d4 plus 2 rounds to reload the breath weapon. Why? Why, when it has access to spells like Time Stop?
Spellcasting is hard for DMs because it
is.
It's a lot more thing of, oh, hey, so I got to play these things, and then I got to go open up a book and figure out the right spell, so I got to go play the same thing as our mage who was just...
But see, that's not the hardest thing in the world. So I'm going to pitch one of our books right now. So if you're playing D&D 5.0, we'll have a link to this down in the description. But Jacob, primarily, created a book called Human NPCs. Mm-hmm. And in that book, we have literally levels 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 13, anyway, 11, 13, 7, anyway. No, it's every 3. It's every
3 starting at 1.
Jeez. It's like 1, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Thank you. That's what it is. Levels for literally every core class in the D&D 5 book.
It's all of the official classes minus the Artificer, because Tasha wasn't out then.
And minus the Ranger, we put in a ranged melee fighter.
Yes.
A ranged fighter, it's
Instead.
better for you.
Yep.
Why do I bring this up? Because in that book, for all the spellcasters, we actually laid out, if you're feeling particularly evil, start with this spell, and then this spell, and then this spell.
I created them all with a handbook, so I grabbed the best spells for things in every situation, so you can quickly run your...
Exactly. So, and then there's just some notes about what spells to use quickly, so that you don't have to run a spellcaster. You can literally open up to the page of the book and go, round 1, this spell against this person. Why? Because it's going to eliminate the fighter from the fight.
Yes.
It's banishment, basically. It's like a temporal banishment. They're gone for 10 rounds.
10 rounds, which is the whole fight.
The whole fight. And now life is interesting. And that concludes part 1 of how to run monsters. We're going to go ahead and upload part 2 in the next couple of days for you guys to watch. So go ahead and check us there. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.